Welcome, Sriranjan sir. It's really pleasure to have you here on the podcast.
Fashion is getting more and more democratized than ever before. The moment a Hussein Chalian or a Balenciaga or a Dior show is happening in Paris, today it is available to a person in the small town in a matter of few seconds. Okay,
Correct.
the opportunities available to the generation today are far more compared to what was available
At your time.
at the time when I was a student. That
Yeah.
is, we are talking about the mid 90s. We are talking about. So I feel that both the generations have their own respective challenges. So I wouldn't say one thing it's better over the other. Okay, but I also expect that the opportunities for doing research is much more now. It's a chosen field, and for chosen field, you have to have the commitment.
Correct.
There is no excuse, no
If and buts.
yeah, no ifs and buts and no mercy.
Welcome, Sriranjan sir. It's really pleasure to have you here on the podcast channel. We're gonna share things about the textile industry and the fashion industry. We'll get to know from you about the textile and the fashion industry, where it is leading right now, where it used to be. It's a pleasure to have you here. Going back to your early stage, where you were in the Hindu college, what brings you into the textile or the fashion industry? What made you landed up in the NIFT?
Right. So, Akshay, the thing goes that since childhood, I've always had an inclination for art-related fields quite a lot, and there was also this inherent tendency within me to, try to find a solution or fix certain things as things goes. Though I was not very great with the mechanical part of it, but there was always this, this mentality to try and find a solution to what is there in front of you.
Yeah.
So I believe that I think these two aspects, as I grew, I started finding that okay, there is a sensibility for art, and there is this mindset to fix up certain things this way or that way. Okay, which I even now do unconsciously, even when going through the, even through a footpath, I feel like the footpath could have been a bit more wider.
Yeah, I've seen
there should
that.
have been this trees hanging around, right now. So that kind of things are there. So it is that inherent ability to try to fix something or find a solution, and a sensibility of an art which combined together, which I think led to this field. So I believe, and then coming from a very a typical middle class family where the parents constantly aspire their children to become a doctor or an IIT or an IAS and everything. So I was supposed to become a doctor, and that's primarily the reason why I was in Hindu college, because I was doing botany honors from there while preparing for my medical entrance. And it took me quite some time to convince my parents otherwise that I would like to go into the field of designing. So they were never against it, but at the same time they were
Never
a bit
supportive.
a bit unsure. But the National Institute of Fashion Technology being an institute of repute, so they felt that okay, probably I think we should let him have his way. So it just took me maybe 3 years of constantly pursuing entrance of medicine, and then finally cracking the exam and getting MBBS. That's when they said that okay, now you can take a choice of designing or medicine. So I told designing it is. That's how it was.
Which was a specific moment that you chose to enter into the NIFT or the designing college instead of you could have gone for the fashion management, you could have gone for other industry, other artisan field, maybe a craft, maybe interior designer, but just fashion designing. Why is it?
Because fashion, I have this, as I told you, I have this inherent ability to try and fix certain things. Okay, so that just didn't stay limited to certain aspect of life. I would love landscaping. I would love rearranging the spaces within a room, and even putting my table into a particular order. But when it came to dress and outfits and everything, they always used to be so fascinating, the whole world of outfits. And especially when my father was a person who was quite inclined towards a lot of cultural things. Okay. So he used to encourage us to look at various civilizations, whether it is Greek, whether it is Indian, whether it is Mesopotamian. So, like the kind of costumes, the outfits, at an everyday pace, it used to influence our lives in some way or the other. Eventually, a stage reached where I felt that, like that was, I'm talking about way back in the 90s, when you feel that in page 3, and in everyday Indian fashion was booming during that time.
Yeah.
The early 90s was happening, and you could see the stalwarts of Indian fashion like Rohit Bal, Sunit Verma,
Yeah.
JJ Valaya. So they were all showing up in the newspaper articles, in fashion. In various magazines, in fashion spots and everything. That was strongly influenced me in some way or the other.
Yeah.
So I felt that I could take up that as my chosen field, So to execute my artistic ideas and to try and see if I can find a solution. And that is where I think.
So was there any brand, was there any person who inspired you the most to land up in the field of fashion?
Okay, definitely not brands, to be sure about it, but it was the Indian designers who started getting me into that zone. Like as I told you the names, okay?
Yeah.
But eventually, as you're learning about them, then you start finding about international designers, okay? Like the Dior, like Armani. During those times, those were the names at an international level which were making an impact, okay?
Yeah.
So then you would want to look at, oh my God, that's how the fashion is happening out there. That's how it's changing the society also. And Indian economy was, if you remember, 1992 was the time when Indian liberalization of the economy happened.
Yeah.
So that was also the time, if you remember, a lot of Miss Indias were making it to the Miss Universe, Miss World.
Yeah, I do remember.
So that was another attraction for me, like oh wow. So it's like a mindset which says like, okay, you can also go internationally if you want to, okay. So that was something which was influencing me, and I could see that Indian people were slowly establishing in the international format, okay. And that's when I realized that fashion is something I think I would like to take up and do further research on and do something about it. Though I was still very unsure. Eventually, what will I do about it?
Yeah.
But definitely not brands. It's the international designers. So Indian designers to begin with, and then eventually leading into international ones.
So you more inspired by Indian culture, Indian prints, Indian heritage, or were you more inspired by the Western side of it, like more Indian? As you mentioned that you were more inspired by the Indian designers,
right?
But were you more inspired by the Indian designers in the Western field or the Indian cultural
aspect? So let me put it like this: like the Indian designers, the work they were putting in front started showing some kind of an identity to a new age Indian fashion, okay. But then while that was going on, there were designers like Ritu Kumar, okay. There were other designers who were showing the rich craftsmanship of Indian heritage, okay, especially the textile heritage like chikankari, like zardozi, like Paithani brocades, Javanasi brocades. So when the country is moving towards in an international direction, and when these things emerge very strongly in that context, you feel that okay, Indian. So we had Sunit Verma and other international Indian designers who were strongly influenced by Western cultural icons, okay. But then they showcased it in a very Indian format, which was something which was beautiful, okay.
Correct.
So this amalgamation of both the East and the West is something that very strongly attracts me, while being rooted to the Indian. Strongly, I'm rooted to the Indian culture. Okay? But it is the amalgamation of civilization that really sets me exciting to work on designs, because something that comes from West or something that comes from Far East or something from the Central Asia, whatever it is there, okay. So long as we are able to appreciate it and see the good side of it and able to align it with the design functional aspect and the sensibility aspect, I think that's something which sets me going, like I'm excited about. But let me tell you one thing, having said that, as an Indian culture, we've got so much to showcase. Like even now, I still feel we haven't really explored enough of Indian traditional art and craft to be able to bring it to at an international level. So I think still there's a lot of scope that we can do.
We have the different cultures in different corner of our country.
I believe that India is a nation with every 100 kilometers there's a new country and a civilization, right?
This is what I was about
and with that kind of a vibrancy, okay, and diversity, imagine promoting each of them in the international forum and converting them into commercial, prospectus. I think that will be a great idea, and especially Indian textiles. I believe like what Yoji Yamamoto and Rei Kawakubo and we had Issey Miyake doing to Japan. I think we still are looking forward to Indian designers who are going to be bringing Indian fashion to the mainstream international fashion arena. That is something which is still, I think we are still on the way to it. But soon we will be achieving it.
I've had met someone like a week ago, and she was working with some designer, and by side, she's making her own label. She belongs from a very small region of Patna, and she's bringing that Madhubani art at the international level. She's working with a designer in London, and she has been showcasing those designs to I didn't know about that, what is Madhubani art is all about. I didn't even know that exists. I have heard about that Madhubani art, but I didn't know the specification of Madhubani art. I thought whenever we thought about India heritage culture, we think about either Rajasthan or the South Indian part of it. This is what I believe.
Or Taj Mahal.
Yeah. But then I didn't know about that we have East India that exists. We have that Bhuj. We have that Gujarat area which exists. They have very different culture than us. We have Kashmir that exists. We have that all the states that, this is what you said, that every 100 kilometers we have a different country. We have a different language. We have a different culture. We have a different food.
Right.
This is all. So really nice to know this from you.
Yeah.
And so how was your overall experience if you go back to the 90s when you were doing your fashion design, you were in NEV. How was your overall experience to be a person that has been entered into a NIFT, a designing college, and who has studied botany in their previous studies?
So Akshay, it goes like that. Before answering your question, I'd just like to add on to the point which you made, where you felt that how a girl from Bihar is collaborating with an international designer. In today's world, I tell you, the prospect is open to young designers are unlimited. Okay.
Yeah.
And today, while staying in a small town, earlier always used to be like fashion is restricted to Delhi, Mumbai, Bengaluru, and it's a metropolitan people's prerogative, okay? But today with internet being available at the grassroots level, okay, and with so much of infrastructural development that is happening within the country. I must tell you today that an average Indian who is living in a smaller town also is equally aware of things at an international and a global level, okay? And now with fashion getting more democratized, okay, what happens is a person being in a semi-rural background also can equally align themselves to the global fashion. Okay, and now with things like Amazon and other things, making everything reach at every corner. You can have the latest of the fashion available in the downstream village. Okay,
correct.
So in which case, what happens is things are changing in the new world. Okay, so as much as they are changing for the buyer, for the purchaser, consumer, it's also changing for your aspirations also. So staying in a small town, you can actually set up your own good design studio if you're well trained and if you're well trained and skilled and trained from a good institute. You can still go back to your town. You can establish your own space or brand, and you can think of even marketing it to Manhattan or to Barcelona or to anywhere in the world. Because the world is, and especially India is growing at that pace. Okay, so that offers great opportunity. Now coming back to the space which you're talking about in the 90s, okay, how things were. So for me, when I'm coming from the field of a normal middle class family where you're aspiring to be a doctor, engineer, or to become an IAS, okay, then to think of coming into the world of fashion was completely different. So the circumstances at home are, okay, reasonably fashion aware people. But when you are entering into the zone of NIFT during those days, it was a resplendent organization. Of course, even today it is. But during those days, it was the India's international gateway to fashion. So the kind of faculties we had, the kind of students who had that concept, it was a very different life altogether. So, it opened up a zone which was throwing unlimited possibilities, design discussions, we have debates, we used to, have a chai pe charcha over what this concept could be over that, okay? Having a work done with so much of discretion that we would not even share it with the friends because so much you value the copyright of your work, that kind of a things. Then the class disciplines, the kind of splendid avenues they've opened up. That was a great space. I really thank my college, yes, the faculties and the institution for actually making me the person that I am today because of that. So as you travel into so you see that there was a tough level of competition during that time also, okay, which I believe is happening even today,
Yeah.
But then the students will always be students, okay.
Yeah.
So they will have their own spaces that they worked out, their own spaces of rebellion that they work out, their own spaces of innovation that they work out, their own spaces of laziness that they work out. So everything will remain the same. But today, I just feel that the struggle is much lesser in terms of research because during those days, even if we have to create a kind of a presentation, you had to walk at least 1 kilometer away to get a printout.
Yeah.
You understand?
You have to go through the books and read the
We will have to scout through the lanes of Daryaganj and the South Ex market to go through so many vogues and collections to get that one picture which could fit rightly into your mood board, okay?
But so then today, it also adds up the competition as well, no? Because there are more people who are getting into this industry. If it decreases the research work, but it adds more competition. What do you think about it?
No, so the way I look upon it is that whatever number of competition is there, your dedication or your engagement or your commitment to the field that you've chosen, that should be 100%. If it can't be 150%.
Yeah.
That's the way I look at it, because design and fashion is not a field where parents say, "Mera beta to beti to bada hoke designer banega," So it's a field where I think the child develops its own interest, and then you're getting into it. So you have convinced already your parents to get into this field, which I believe nowadays most of the parents are open about it. Okay.
Yeah.
But as you are going ahead in this field, then you don't have an excuse for not doing your work, or if you are not able to give more than what you have promised it for, because it's a chosen field. And for chosen field, you have to have the commitment. Correct. There is no excuse, no
if and buts.
Yeah, no ifs and buts and no mercy. You have to do it, man. You have to
do it.
So in which case, if you can't stand for yourself, then who else can you stand for? Okay.
Correct.
So that is why that I feel that in today's generation, they are definitely more smarter generation. I really like the way they have this thing of coming up with solutions. Yeah. Sometimes the solution could lack a little bit of depth, or their research work could lack a little bit of depth and all, but they are definitely smarter generation. And I love entering into the space of my students. That's something which sets me excited.
Yeah. So having said that, as soon as you completed your studies,
right,
you must have done some jobs as a designer, maybe as a merchandiser. Then you had started your own business.
Right.
So what pushed you to get into that business? What made you? I appreciate that you have started your own company, the Export House.
Right.
And you know about the culture of India as well.
Right.
And that to the deep root level. And then you have studied in NEFT, gone through the streets, the local streets of Delhi, to know about the textiles, to know about the fashion, to know about everything. And getting into the export house, starting your own export house. What pushed you to start your own export house, and what were the difficulties? Even it's procuring the orders, starting the export house, dealing with the laborers. What pushed you to start that export house, and what was your overall experience of and problems of the export house?
So it goes that I initially didn't start with the intention of starting an export house. It started off at my own label, which I wanted to launch.
Okay.
And it started at a very small space, a studio space, which was earlier used as a buffalo shed,
Okay.
Somewhere in Ladosarai. And then I spruced up the place, made it into my studio. And then the space started giving me that the label which I wanted to launch. Okay. Even though that was starting off at a good note, somewhere at some point through. So what happened was immediately after NIFT, I got into working in two companies. One was primarily European-based company, which was targeting the French market. Okay, it was for Span India, and an amazing place to work with great creative, outcomes coming out in the space. A wonderful place. Okay, and with designers coming from Paris who were giving great inputs, which actually set me. Very strongly gave me an understanding of what European, especially the French market was. And Paris being a fashion capital of the world, it was a great space for me to travel across to Paris to see what was happening at a global stage in the fashion and everything. Okay, traveling to spaces like Vienna, traveling to places like Spain, or to that Switzerland. So that was the time when things were. I was getting exposed to that kind of fashion. So I realized early at that stage that my sensibilities are very European oriented. I could see that, okay? That in no ways means that I am back siding the Indian sensibility, but everybody has their own sensibility. So mine was going in the direction which is primarily influenced and strongly impacting me in terms of the European way of structuring the garments, the designs, the surfaces, the sensibility, the collection, the look, the aesthetics, okay? So then as I started my own label also, it was strongly reflecting those things, okay? So it was not really exactly an Indian market. It was for the Indian market with strongly a Western sensibility. But as it was just growing in a particular direction and it hadn't even reached a maturity, I realized that I started getting orders from European markets. And then it was an organic turn towards the European market. And that's how the export comes into the scene. And then I realized that I couldn't keep my commitments to the domestic label which I had launched. Okay, so I had to take that as a backseat, and this excited me also somewhere. Along with the scale of business it is growing, it was also giving me the excitement of working with the same international designs that I was very keen on. But as I went ahead, the business started growing, it started reaching at multiple levels and everything. Then at that stage, suddenly I realized that most of my time was going, what I was primarily investing in sampling, production, sourcing, labeling, and shipments, logistics, looking after the finance, looking after
You're doing it all your own.
Yeah, okay. And then email correspondence and everything and all. And then I realized that somewhere down the line, that creative side of mine was getting very limited to a very few times I could spend with the designers who were coming to my company. Okay? Now, and that is the time when I started missing this aspect a lot, kind of a thing and all. And I decided that somewhere I needed to put a closure to the whole thing, because otherwise, this is not the life that I wanted, because I'm a person who likes creative outbursts and creative inputs constantly, okay? And at this stage, it's not happening like the way it is. So one of my very close friends, Anushi, suggested to me, why don't you try teaching to the students of NIFT? So I started with going to the NIFT to teach certain students on certain specific modules. And somewhere down the line in the process, I was seeing that it is just not about teaching, it's also about giving back to the society. Okay? So that's when I decided that maybe I should restructure my own life, okay? And probably start giving more time to the academics and research, because the excitement of academics, especially creative side of the academics and the research work that involves in it, that was exciting me more at that stage. And also my experience in the industry, how it was aligning with my creative side, wherein by which I could give that back to the next generation who's coming up, okay? So that is something which I found more exciting in life, more fulfilling.
Rather than starting your another label. Or rather than continuing the export house.
A lot of friends are even now asking me, why don't you start a label? We are funding you completely. But start it, But then I feel like maybe I might, I'm not very sure about it. But as of now, the academics is keeping me totally happy and satisfied. Okay? Motivating, pushing, fighting with my next generation, getting that the feedbacks and input from their side, giving my side of it. Together we create something exciting. That is something I believe
which excites you more.
Actually, I find that very exciting, very challenging, very very growing, very evolving. It makes me feel more evolved in the process. Okay?
Yeah.
So, and every time I see my students achieving their success, you feel a part of you is,
Yeah.
it's equally
Contributing
growing in the
yeah.
process, and you feel that their success is yours too.
Is yours.
And that is where I think the whole satisfaction of faculty comes in. Being a faculty or a professor, I also feel that you need to love your students in order to be able to be entering that space of teaching, because you can have difference of opinion with them. You can have even strong arguments also with them.
You can agree to disagree on something.
Exactly. But the intent is, by the end of it, the intent is the outcome should be a win-win situation for both the parties. I learn from my students as much as I am able to teach them. Okay. So in that process, I feel that that love which you have for the student only grows in the process. So that is something which I really enjoy, and also the way I feel that academics is constantly changing as much as the field of fashion and design is. Okay.
Yeah.
So I feel
every day
it is changing from every aspect in fact. Okay. Now with the advent of AI, that change is getting accelerated big time. Okay.
Yeah.
So challenges are new now. Okay, so that means as a faculty, it is even more an exciting phase, to go through this the balance between the human intelligence and the artificial intelligence,
Correct.
So very interestingly, recently Pearl Academy, where I am teaching, they came up with the whole idea. The head of the organization, Mr. Mehra, came up with the idea of aligning the human intelligence and the artificial intelligence. And that is when we create a very balanced world for the future, So that is something which is exciting, because by the end of it, artificial intelligence is as much unlimited as it can sound, as much as the human intelligence. It can't go beyond that, right? So the human intelligence is the driving force, actually.
Yeah. So you, being a boomer, you have studied with millennials, you have made millennial studies, then going to Gen Zs, then now Gen X as well.
Yes.
You have made them study.
I believe Gen Alpha now.
Yeah, but Gen Alpha must not be a student at this stage.
By Gen Alpha should be 18, right?
Yeah.
So they are my students.
Okay. So you have gone through 4 generations.
Right.
So how does, what has been changed in the process of thinking, in the process of studying, in the process of teaching? What do you think that what has changed in these 4 generations? What do you think?
See, you should understand that the world is now moving more faster than ever before. Okay.
Yeah.
This is a reality we all must accept, right? So earlier, in order to achieve a particular objective, if you had to go through a particular energy span or a time span or whatever it is, right? Today, now that span is completely changed altogether. The dimensions have changed, the dynamics have changed, the equations have changed, right? So it is available at the tip of your fingertips. If you wanted a very good image, you really needed to scroll through a lot of spaces and spending a lot of time, right?
Yeah.
And now you just type in the keywords. With AI, it's like there in front of you.
Yeah.
Okay, more than that you ever imagined. So that is the rate at which things are going.
Yeah.
You're also having a new generation whose attention span is virtually to a few seconds. That's all. They are an Insta generation, they are ChatGPT generation, right? So in which case they feel that anything beyond a particular time period, their brain starts making a choice whether they want to be in it or not, So, and compared to the times when I was a student, where we would spend almost 2 to 3 hours listening to a lecture.
Yeah.
Right. So that ways a lot of things have changed.
Yeah.
The kind of the opportunities available to the generation today are far more compared to what was available
at your time.
At a time when I was a student. That is, we are talking about the mid-90s. We are talking about. So I feel that both the generations have their own respective challenges. So I wouldn't say one thing it's better over the other. Okay, but I also expect that the opportunities for doing research is much more now. The possibilities of research, the storehouse and the repository of information available at the fingertips is much higher today. So I believe the generation is definitely more smarter for sure, because information is available at the fingertips. But what are they doing out of that information? That is something I think which really needs to be analyzed, because Are they doing something which is actually worth the kind of situation they are in today, or they are underperforming, or they are probably deviating too much, or they are probably doing something which is less in terms of depth, like there could be a level of shallowness up to some extent. Those are certain things that we need to monitor.
Correct.
But otherwise, I think students continue to be rebels as much as the students during those times also. And students are constantly looking forward, especially I'm coming from a creative field, they're constantly looking forward to innovation and changes. The challenges and the opportunities are equally great. Why? Because the opportunity is amazingly great because of technology, big time coming inside it. Fashion is getting more and more democratized than ever before. And the world, like the moment a Hussein Chalayan or a Balenciaga or a Dior show is happening in Paris, today it is available to a person in the small town in a matter of few seconds. Okay.
Correct.
So that's the world we are getting into. So I believe that it's an exciting phase of transformation happening across the globe.
Correct.
With technology, with mindsets, with civilizational alliances we are seeing in. So I feel it's a great period to be. Okay. Differences will always be there. 100 years later, the students will complain of the same set of things. Okay, but only thing is the modalities will change, the mediums will change. That's all.
Yeah. So, and what do you think that has bring the most the change in the today's generation, and the generation where you were the student, like the art of teaching, the art of learning? What do you think that human intelligence and the artificial intelligence is gonna come over the human intelligence? Is it possible? What do you think about it?
See, I feel that like everything in life needs to be handled, right? Needs to be handled carefully. Like fire is a tool.
Yeah.
Fire is a tool, okay? What you do out of it is what creates the outcome of it, right? You use it to light up a room, or you use to cook your food. Or the other thing is that you carelessly handle it, you burn yourself and you burn the entire house down, right?
Yeah.
So similarly, AI and technologies are tools, right? So what do we make out of it? It depends totally upon us, okay?
Yeah.
Are we going to open up an unlimited opportunity, a world full of opportunities and greater achievement at a civilizational level? Or are we going to go to abuse it and bring it down to the level where we are going to be finding means of self-destruction? Okay?
Yeah.
That totally depends upon us, okay? Yeah. Now, in terms of the student to teacher, that relationship and the format that we are heading towards, I definitely find the advent of technology as a great welcome steps, because what were earlier taught in probably and was difficult to communicate more effectively is being made very easy with that advent of technology.
Yeah.
Okay, a lot of things are available for students to start analyzing, because see, the pursuing of the information is important, but if the information is easily being made available to you, what you do out of it is now it's your world to decide, like your choice, right? And that choice, that point where you need to make the choice becomes easier. But out of that choice, how much are you doing further analysis, and you're using your intelligence to bring it to the next level? That totally depends upon us today, okay? But all the possibilities and all the opportunities are being provided. So that way, yes, today's children are far more luckier than their previous predecessors. But at the same time, I see that there was an ability, in a period when I was a student and the earlier period, there was this craving to learn more, to pick up more, and that will set you going into directions which you never treaded before,
Yeah.
That is something which I feel a bit could be inoculated with the students today, because since things are so easily available, that need to go out and track out something more.
Yeah.
That is something I feel that
Missing.
Yeah, and that we really need to make them realize the importance of it, because with that also coming in, the kind of solutions, the kind of outcomes that they could create will be quite interesting to look forward to.
Yeah.
And also the worry which I constantly have is that of their attention span and the amount you can retain an interest in a particular topic, because a generation wherein by which within 2 seconds of they can change the thing that they would like to watch. Imagine you can't do the same in the classroom, right? So in which case they really need to have that focus developed so that they can get the maximum out of a classroom or a learning experience, that is something. But as a teacher, I would rather say it's a great exciting phase, because you have students coming up with vivid ideas. You have students taking in technology in very different ways. You have their creative outcomes coming in various formats. So I think it's a great phase as a teacher to be, as much as the challenges are.
Yeah. As far as I know, and it's lovely to hear it from you. And as far as I know, people has been misconcepted with the term sustainability. Sustainability is all about having the expensive brand rather than going towards the fast-moving fashion brands? Or what is it all about? It's all about the expensive experience, or is it a fight between cheap versus the expensive thing? And what is the sustainability is all about?
Okay. See, I'll tell you, among the mega trends that is predicted for the future, ecology plays a very important role for our survival for the next maybe 100, 200 years more. I don't know where we are heading towards. It could be 2000, it could be 2 lakh years more. But the rate at which we are consuming the resources in this planet and irresponsibly behaving, that is definitely heading us towards a disastrous consequence, right? So sustainability is just a belief system. For me, it's a firm belief system which will ensure our survival and the quality of the life that we lead in towards a better situation. Because I always believe that we have never inherited this planet from our ancestors or parents. I always believe that if you go with the mindset that you have borrowed it from our children, then you'll realize it, because you have to return to them it intact. Our ancestors, the ancestors were much before to us. Maybe I can say 100 years, 1,000 years back and everything. They were far wiser than what we are today. When they realized the importance of, intelligently using the resources that is available. It's not like they didn't have the opportunity to abuse the environment. They did have. But then
they did not.
They chose wisely, right? Then why are we becoming so irresponsible? Why is our pattern so greed oriented? They say that there is enough for everyone's need, but never enough for everyone's greed, right? So in fact, sustainability is just a constant reminder, a belief system, a practice mechanism, a way of life, a pathway, which is constantly telling us that we better get our house into order before it's going to be too late. Right? So when it comes to fashion, I believe, is not an island. It is always a reflection of our own self, our society. So fashion is nothing different from the society, right? So in which case, in case of fashion, do you know that fashion is the second largest polluter in this planet?
Industry,
After petroleum, fashion is the largest polluter in this planet.
Even petroleum, the outproduct of the petroleum, which we call polymers or polyester, it anyway contribute a lot to the fashion industry. Because at this stage, no fashion brand is there who is not using the polyester in their production. So in a way that it is the most polluted.
So it's just not about using polyester kind of a things also. It is a whole large factory setups which is consuming so high levels of energies, right? It is also the way in which a larger mechanism of people is involved in overproducing things which are not effectively being consumed. What happens to the clothes which is, you made 100 clothes, people bought maybe 70, what happens to the 30 of it? It's dumped. Where exactly does it go down the chain? It doesn't go down the chain so effectively. What happens when you decide to buy a polyester jacket, or even if it's an expensive one? You decide to wear it once, twice, thrice, 4 times, 5 times, and then after that, what are you? You're dumping it, and that stays in the environment for another 300 years. And constantly releasing toxic fumes and other byproducts. Where are we heading to? So I just believe that sustainability is strongly being brought in by great academies like Pearl Academy and other places, where a student at that stage itself, at every stage, constantly is reminded from the fact that you could take up sustainability as another format for the design solutions that you're looking forward to, wherein by which more and more use of natural
things.
elements, okay, more and more less and less reliability on chemicals to make your, like the soft t-shirt which you're wearing or a soft vest that you're wearing. You feel, oh my God, look how soft and nice. It must be so natural.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry, natural form doesn't come so soft.
Yeah.
Each and every cotton shirt that we are wearing, it approximately goes through almost 250 different kinds of chemical treatment before it reaches you, and you find it's so naturally cotton. You understand that?
Yeah.
And where did those 250 chemical go after treating? They went back into the environment. Only making the environment more and more toxic.
Polluted.
Okay?
Yeah.
Whether you're dumping it into the earth or whether you're dumping them into the water or finally them fuming into the air, you're completely destroying the environment. Okay? All the printed fabrics that you see around you, they are hardcore chemicals.
Yeah.
What happens when they print? What does happen? The extra thing lying. It is all drained down to the water or into the earth.
Yeah.
Imagine the entire ecosystem of that area is gone.
Yeah.
And every day it is happening. Every day, day and night.
But does sustainability comes at a cost? Like, is it expensive?